Make every night a wonderful journey, no matter where you are. Good night, sweet dreams. The first story. Hello, Harry. Harry checked the address one last time. There could be no doubt this was the building he had been looking for, yet he still found himself staring in disbelief at the dilapidated warehouse that stood before him. The walls, which should have been a pleasant cream, were instead a dirty grey, and the swollen wooden door made for an unwelcoming entrance. It was a stark contrast to the varnished mahogany depicted in the photograph he had been sent. Harry found himself questioning the safety of entering such a building, but after a few moments of deliberation, he decided to enter. After all, it would have been such a shame to drive all this way for naught. The interior was no better. As he passed through the doorway, Harry's nostrils were greeted by the musky scent of an age of rotten neglect. A vast emptiness stood before him, illuminated only slightly in a far corner by a dull and flickering glow. Harry retrieved his small flashlight from his pocket, switched it on, and began to tread towards what he hoped would be the answers he had been looking for. The source of the glow was revealed to be a small television, set on top of a desk. Before he could begin to question how it was possible for the television to be drawing any power, his eyes were drawn to a scene unfolding on the screen before him. It appeared to be footage from a CCTV camera. A small beam of light, coming from somewhere off screen to the right, was shaking back and forth, and its source was rapidly approaching the camera. Harry then saw a dark figure looming from the left of the screen, before the light suddenly disappeared. After a few seconds of darkness, the video began to repeat itself, scanning the area again. Harry noticed a scrap of paper on the floor in front of him. Picking it up, he read two words. "Hello, Harry." A terrible sense of dread filled him, and he knew he didn't want to be in this place for 1 second longer. He sprinted towards the door, his flashlight jerking to and fro in the darkness. Just for a second, he thought he could see someone ahead of him before he dropped his torch and the bulb shattered, plunging him into darkness. The second story, Last Sane Man, posted on X by the Green Gentleman. PD quo M7 Ebo. The day was mundane, even for my life. The internet seemed dead, and the only messages from my friends were just a string of numbers and letters. I guess it was a bug with the website, or some great big in-joke, and no channels on the TV would work. I tried phoning my friends to see what they wanted, but when they picked up, all I got was static and mumbled words that I could barely understand. I decided that the only entertaining option for the day would be to go out for a nice stroll in the park, just half a mile away. As I got dressed and prepared to leave my house, I noticed that everything seemed cold, not temperature-wise. Everything just seemed like a king had died, or a massive tragedy had occurred. I guessed I was just feeling a bit off because all technology seemed to be failing me. I wandered around the park, kind of aimlessly, thinking about things, pretty odd and nonsensical thoughts, like what sounds do ostriches make. These thoughts continued to clutter my mind until I came to an old, rusty children's playground and saw a little girl smiling at me. I stopped, awkwardly, and smiled faintly back at her. She raised a tiny hand and waved at me, then signaled me to come closer. Nervously, I crept over to her as calmly as I could, hoping that I don't appear to be some kind of sick rapist. When I was within a fairly close distance of her, the grin quickly faded from her face. Almost inhumanly fast, the little girl climbed up to the tallest point of the structure, and then leapt off. At first her head smashed against the concrete floor, killing her instantly with the most horrifying and sickly cracking sound. I dived to her side, almost slamming against the floor, to see if she was alive. The color of her face and the life of her eyes were fading, and she was making a constant bloody gurgling sound. I felt tears swelling up behind my eyes, as the most terrifying thoughts ran through my head. Did she commit suicide because of me? Was she murdered? The constant stream of terror was interrupted by a faint, heavy breathing coming from behind me. I slowly and hesitantly turned my head, and was greeted by the stare of an old man looking so fascinated and entertained. I made her do that. She was such a good girl. I knew she wouldn't say no. The old man stuttered. I stumbled back. Horrified, he walked, or should I say twitched his way over to the cold corpse and knelt down. He leaned in and licked her face, greedily lapping up the blood dripping from her mouth. Mortified and confused, I ran up to the man, kicked out a few teeth and started sprinting as hard as I could. I belted down the park until my legs ached and my lungs burned, desperately trying to reach my house. I crammed the keys into the lock after missing it several times and ran inside. I wiped off the tears that were rolling down my cheeks, picked up my cell phone, and dialed 911. However, when the police answered, it seemed to just be a room full of manic laughing and screaming. I tried talking to them, but they simply laughed and screamed even harder. I slammed down the phone and cried. Suddenly, I felt a sharp throbbing hit to the back of my head, which caused my legs to give. I toppled over to the floor as everything started to get dark, but before I completely lost consciousness, I caught a glimpse of a grinning woman holding a crowbar behind me. "He's so different," she whispered. "Since then, the other people have done many things, started wars, bombed the planet to smithereens, and caused the extinction of most animals in the world. What have they done with me? Oh, drugged me and made me dance and bleed for their entertainment every single day, strapped me to my bed when I'm not dancing, and hailed me as the last sane man in the world. I think they're trying to break me too, and then what will they do with me? My guess is that they will kill me due to the loss of my novelty, but I openly welcome that. It's 10 times better than anything else they could do. But I'm afraid, my friends, I must leave now. The doctor has already stuck the needle in my arm." The third story, The Cleric of Madness. The sign, that sign that got him sign. It's insane. How could someone create something so insane? A boy once ended up in a forest. He did not know why he was there or how he ended up there. His home was very close to it, but he's never been in this part. He was next to a stone temple with odd signs on it. He decided to call them clerics. He left soon after investigating the signs. Immediately after he stepped out of the grounds of the temple, he found himself at home. A familiar voice shouted, "Supper time." After he ate, he went to bed. He had a strange nightmare. He found himself again at the temple grounds, but something was off about where he was. He tried to walk into the forest, but this time there appeared to be an invisible wall. He decided to go in the temple. The signs were still there, but every time he would walk to them, he would suddenly get a burst of fear surging through him. He did not know why, but he started to develop fear of the signs. He walked into the temple. There was one room, and the signs he saw outside were also in the room. The entire ground of the temple was that sign. There was a light at the end of the room. He walked towards it. He soon was almost drowned in sweat and fear. He was getting the same effect from the signs outside, but this was much more intense. A dark arm came out of the light and grabbed him. He woke up screaming. Covered in sweat, it was morning. Things went on like this for weeks, months, and almost years. His parents were getting concerned of his mental state. They brought him to a psychiatrist. The psychiatrist asked him to draw what he was fearing, so he drew the sign. They both were soon drowned with fear. The sign, it had the same effect on them as in his dreams. They were going insane. The sign's fear power was even more intense than the light he saw. They soon went insane. The psychiatrist had killed the boy with a butter knife he had in the room. Police looked around the room. They saw the drawing. They were out of the room and attempted to kill themselves. Though one officer survived, police officials questioned him. All he could say was the sign. Finally, they got him to say something. That sign that got him sign. It's insane. How could someone create something so insane? He drew it on a piece of paper. Their fates were unknown.